One, RFK Jr. confirmed as the new head of HHS. The response from every bit of this disruption, these change agents, has largely been a virtual call for violence. Two, what you watching with the critical drinker. Three, 5 different personality types when it comes to conflict. The avoider, the competitor, the analyzer, the collaborator, and the accommodator. With 2 experts in conflict resolution. It is the Will Cain Show, streaming live at foxnews.com, on the Fox News YouTube channel, and the Fox News Facebook page. Terrestrial radio, market to market, but always on demand by subscribing at Apple or on Spotify. Join us every Monday through Thursday at 12 o'clock Eastern Time right here at Fox News Facebook and Fox News YouTube. And you can become a member of the militia. The militia right now, two-a-days, Dan, is part of the audience. We can start bringing them into the show on a more active basis. We've got the chat up and running throughout the program, and we want to bring you on to the show. Keep it nice. Keep it above board. Keep it R-rated and less. We'll accept R-rated, but no X-rated comments as we integrate you into the show. I'm excited about that. Get just a little more interactive, a little more of a conversation back and forth. It turns out I have a co-host, by the way, at 4 p.m. Have you guys noticed that? I've got a co-host.
It seems that way.
I just
the Will Cain Show.
I just added it to my resume. I said producer for the Will Cain and President Trump show.
Yeah. I had Rachel Campos Duffy booked yesterday, and this has happened quite a few times. And I had to text her, sorry you didn't make the show. My co-host is unpredictable and can be long-winded, which I don't begrudge him because, it's really good for my ratings. But I'm basically have a co-host in President Donald Trump.
Maybe you're good for his ratings.
Maybe he's like, let's do it during the Will Cain Show.
We like Will.
I don't know.
We like Will
the
a
best
lot.
show around.
Let's help Will. I've been back channeling with his
it's-
staff to make sure that he does it during your show to get the
Really?
numbers up a little. Yeah. Caroline.
I get a lot of messages though that people say they wish he didn't sometimes because
Yeah.
they're like,
This is our
it's
favorite show.
30-minute show now. Right. But I don't mind it. I don't mind it at all. I love having the president on the program almost every day. I think he'll probably be there again today. He's meeting with Indian Prime Minister Modi today. We'll see what they have to say. Anyway, it's we've had this conversation on an ongoing basis, and I find it so fascinating that I just think that we're all going to have to begin to come to grips with we're living in a post-partisan moment. It doesn't mean it's going to last forever, but I truly believe that. Now, I know there are people that don't believe that. I think the Brooklyn Brunch crew probably doesn't believe that. But, I think the people that are still seeing things through one of 2 prisms are living in the past. Those 2 prisms they're seeing it through are either A, huge anti-Trump 2016 to 2020 mindset, right? Hate Donald Trump, everything he stands for, can't escape, just stuck in that. And I think that moment has passed. I truly do. It's like if you went into a zombie apocalypse and then you emerged out the other side, like that's the few remaining zombies, truly. And I'm not trying to insult the Brooklyn Brunch crew 2 days, but I think
That's all right.
they're the Walking Dead. I do. I think that's over. Like that Trump derangement syndrome, obviously it still exists, but I think it's a radically decreasing minority. And then I think there's a second prism, and that's the people that see the world the way we have for the past half century, and that's through Republican and Democrat, left and right. And they see the ideological spectrum as just that, a linear spectrum. And it's like team versus team. And I truly think that we are in a post-partisan, post-ideological, post-left-right moment. And I say the word moment specifically because I don't know that it will last, okay? I hope it lasts. But I do believe that what President Trump is doing is a revolution of common sense. I really do. I mean, the Wall Street Journal wrote that right now both sides are sort of shooting within their own nets, like both on policy perspective and like it doesn't make sense. It doesn't, Trump with Ukraine and Russia, Trump on tariffs. These are not anything that someone as recently as 7 years ago would have been alt-right, far-right. You just can't. You can't apply that to the way the world is shuffling. What's up, two-a-days?
Yeah, the Brooklyn Brunch crew, they've been, railing against Trump, but they said if Trump could get something done with Ukraine, they're all for it, and they'd be behind him with it. So there are things that do change their perspective on it. They'd be like, I would respect it, and I would like that if he did that. So they're willing a little bit to kind of give over to it.
I found this fascinating. This is in the morning note here that we all put together for the show. But the Pod Save America bros, the Obama bros, right?
They hate them now.
John, your Brooklyn Brunch crew hates him now?
Hates Pod Save America.
What?
Yeah.
Why?
They turned on him. They just think
they
too,
said recently,
yeah.
Those dudes said basically that it's kind of amazing what Trump and DOGE are doing. They said it's amazing the kind of cuts and efficiency they're beginning to accomplish. They said they tried to do that under Obama to some extent and largely failed, right? And I find that fascinating that government efficiency was kind of like I'm for liberty, justice, freedom for all, and some government efficiency. So it's kind of wild that the left is freaking out so much now about it. But yeah, even the Pod Save America bros are acknowledging this sort of post-partisan moment of getting something accomplished. But there still is The Walking Dead. Let's get to that with story number one. Whatever they are, zombies, Walking Dead, a radically decreasing minority, the way they're responding to government efficiency, the way they're responding to what I think is a post-partisan moment is incredible. I actually think it's really exposing for these people on two fronts. They're like I said earlier, how out of touch they are. But in other cases, these are just paid commentators. These are people that are they're there to be opposition, and you're paid to be opposition because there's some segment of the audience that will just not like what's going on for either one of the two reasons I laid out earlier. But they sound like a dying animal. They sound extreme, and it's getting really extreme. Let's start with this guy who's having his moment in the sun. I don't know his first name, Representative Garcia. I don't know where he's from either. But he's the guy that yesterday in a DOGE subcommittee hearing, in the ultimate dork move, tried to co-opt Kendrick Lamar from the Super Bowl halftime performance, and then that was a repeat of his, feud with Drake. Kendrick Lamar is calling Drake a pedophile, and he's written into his lyrics this line called, where he says, a minor. And Garcia ran that out, accusing Musk of something like that. He literally sang the line, dork, a minor. But then he goes on CNN later that night, and he says this.
And I think that he's also harming the American public in an enormous way. And what I think is really important, and what the American public want, is for us to bring actual weapons to this bar fight. This is an actual fight for democracy, for the future of this country, and it's important to push back on the chairperson of this committee.
Actual weapons to this fight. Okay, let's just take that for a moment. Actual weapons. First of all, do I think that his name is Robert Garcia means knives and guns? I don't. I don't think that. And I don't like people taking other people's rhetoric and saying, hey, that rhetoric is a call for actual violence. But he uses the word actual. So I have to grant him a huge benefit of the doubt here, right? I have to be very charitable to say, well, he doesn't mean actual, even though he uses the word actual. But I think there's a more revealing part of this. Democrats, for over a decade, have set the standard. They say rhetoric leads to violence. If you guys can remember 10 years ago, Sarah Palin putting up a congressional battle map, and on the target races that she wanted to overturn or help Republicans win, she used crosshairs. And they all said that was an actual call for violence. They have used much looser things than that to say Donald Trump is inciting violence. So they set the standard that these types of words are incitement to violence. So by their very own standard, they are calling for violence. You know, if someone on the left said, Will, what you just said is racist. And I'm like, no, it's not. It's subjectively not racist. I'm making a point, and you're, hyperbolically turning it into actual racism. But then later, they used the exact same words that I did, right? Am I not allowed to point out, but wait, you said that was the standard for racism, and now you're guilty of it. So I guess you're racist. They're failing their very own standard. You have said in the past that these are incitements to violence, and now you are violating your own standard. Now, the reasonable person to me is like, he doesn't mean knives and guns. But he's told us, Democrats have told us in the past, that you do mean knives and guns. Secondarily, we just lived through a campaign with 2 assassination attempts on the president of the former president, man running for president of the United States. 2. I mean, this is not theoretical. It's not hypothetical. There are Walking Dead zombies out there that are crazy, still in this TDS camp, who hear this stuff, this type of rhetoric, and have shown you they will act on it. This is beyond irresponsible. And I mean that literally. It's beyond irresponsible. It's not just irresponsible. It's worse. And it's not alone. Here's Baltimore Representative Muffe? I don't know. Here he is.
This will be a congressional fight, a constitutional fight, a legal fight, and on days like this, a street fight. Yes, we will stand.
Okay, a street fight. What does he mean by a street fight? I don't know. But you're going to protest in the streets? I don't know. Here's Ayanna Pressley, Congresswoman.
With unprecedented organizing, mobilizing, agitating, we will see you in the courts, in Congress, in the streets. Elon Musk is a Nazi Nepo baby.
Nazi Nepo baby, we will see you in the streets. The same people that said it's okay to punch a Nazi, who are now saying bringing actual weapons to the fight, who are calling for a street fight. And then as we played for you yesterday, this pastor in, I believe it was Chattanooga, Tennessee, using nothing that can be excused as analogy or metaphor, calling for literal violence.
But sometimes violence is necessary. When Elon Musk forces his way into the United States Treasury and threatens to steal your personal information and your Social Security check, there is the possibility of violence.
What is going on? I am interested. I genuinely, fellas, and I texted Patrick this morning. I am interested in bringing on a Democrat, a good faith discussion about why you are so opposed to these cuts in search of government efficiency. You know, I see these quotes. I see Bernie Sanders, right? Is Bernie Sanders good faith? I don't really think so. But I see Bernie Sanders saying the following. So not only are we going to stop the privatization of public education, we're not going to let them destroy the Department of Education. The DOE provides funding for 26 million kids who are living in high poverty areas. And we have the radical idea that maybe poor kids deserve the same quality of education that rich kids do. So we're not going to turn our back on black and brown kids. He's talking about these cuts, specifically the DOE. But the good faith discussion would go something like this. What have you done for black and brown kids over the past half century? What are our educational scores like? Which way are they trending? Has more government funding into federal education done anything to stem this tide? Have you done a good job? Have you done a good job for the black and brown kids, for the recipients? Have you done a good job for the taxpayer? The money you confiscate and redistribute to these schools. Because a good faith discussion acknowledges what a poor job you've done. And if we're cutting from these programs and giving back to the taxpayer, maybe we should consider there's a better way to do it. But in order for me to have that good faith discussion, I've got to get beyond the Walking Dead zombies literally calling for violence. RFK is confirmed as the head of the HHS. Plus, we're going to get into what are you watching with the critical drinker coming up on the Will Cain Show. Have you ever wondered what happened to the legendary Chuck Norris? I recently saw a video he made, and I was shocked. He's in his 80s and still kicking butt and working out and staying active. What's even more shocking is he's stronger, he can work out longer, even has plenty of energy left over for his grandkids. He did this by just making one change. He says he still feels like he's in his 50s. His wife even started doing this one thing, too, and she's never felt better. She says she feels 10 years younger, her body looks leaner, and she has energy all day. So Chuck made a special video that explains everything. Make sure you watch it by going to chuckdefense.com/Cain or by clicking in the link below this video. It will change the way you think about your health. Once again, that's chuckdefense.com/CAIN and click on the link in the description below to watch the video now. You won't believe how simple it is. And just a reminder, the legendary Chuck Norris is a whopping 84 years old and he has more energy than me. He discovered he could create dramatic changes to his health simply by focusing on 3 things that sabotage our body as we age. Watch his method by clicking on the link in the description box below. That is chuckdefense.com/Cain. RFK confirmed as head of HHS. Next on the Will Cain Show. Tulsi Gabbard, Pete Hegseth, RFK Jr., soon Kash Patel, change agents being confirmed by the United States Senate. It's the Will Cain Show, streaming live at foxnews.com, on the Fox News YouTube channel, and the Fox News Facebook page. Hit subscribe at Apple, Spotify, or on YouTube. Like Yuki Curry says on YouTube, this not skibbity. What's that mean, fellas? This not skibbity.
James, that's all you.
I know what skibbity is. My kids say skib. They taught me skibbity. What does that mean? This is not cool? It's not good?
No, it's just it's a tough one to explain. It's like it doesn't associate with the skibbity toilet riz meme. So I guess like in character and culture it differentiates itself.
God, I feel old.
From like the vibe of that meme. So I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing.
I don't think you're not doing a good job. You're not.
I just chat GPT'd it, and it
that was a
didn't
bunch
give
of
me a straight
words.
answer.
That was a bunch of words. That meant nothing.
I just gave you
a bunch of words.
We exist in the context of.
I feel dumber after your explanation.
Same.
I don't feel smarter.
Yeah, we're gonna go away now.
I'm gonna stick to politics.
I'm gonna bring his mic down.
All right, RFK Jr. just a few hours ago, less than that, confirmed by the United States Senate. Watch.
On this vote, the yeas are 52, the nays are 48. The confirmation is confirmed.
52 votes for Robert F. Kennedy Jr. as the new Secretary of Health and Human Services. 1 Republican vote, not for Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Can you guess who it is? Well, he's the same Republican that voted against Pete Hegseth. He's the same Republican who voted against Tulsi Gabbard, the one who voted against Tulsi Gabbard. And he's been now the one to vote against Robert F. Kennedy Jr. It is former Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell. It should be pointed out that for years as Senate Majority Leader, Mitch McConnell demanded, he bullied, he cajoled, he whipped, he persuaded every single Republican to get on the team, to oppose Obama or for whatever his agenda may be. Get on the team. Now, the minute that Mitch McConnell is not captain of the team, he doesn't have an interest in being on the team. He's the one now who can't be whipped, can't be bullied, can't be persuaded to join the Republicans in confirming Donald J. Trump's cabinet. It's a shameful end to a career for Mitch McConnell. On the other side, credit due to current Senate Majority Leader John Thune of South Dakota. Patel, Hegseth, Tulsi, RFK, not shoo-ins. This was not easy to get all the Republicans on board, enough Republicans on board. I know there was a lot of skepticism on the right about John Thune. Right now, you have to give credit where credit is due. I mean, the betting odds at some point for all of these, Hegseth was in the teens at one point. Through his own efforts, the work that he put in, so did Tulsi, so did RFK, and the efforts of many Republican senators to understand their points of view and to support the President of the United States, but also the efforts of the Senate Majority Leader to ensure that this happens needs to be acknowledged because none of these were givens. And now we have change agents at every level of the government. Will Jordan, a.k.a. The Critical Drinker. He's a movie and TV reviewer at YouTube, extremely popular. You can find him at YouTube at The Critical Drinker. He's the author of the Ryan Drake series as well, which is available on Amazon. And he joins us again on the Will Cain Show. What's up?
Yeah, I'm doing good, man.
How are you, Will?
You?
I'll call you Drinker. What do I call you?
You can call me Will. It's okay. We got two Wills on the same podcast. It's fine.
That's right. It won't be confusing at all. Will, what are you watching right now? What are we watching?
I literally I watched the new Captain America movie today because I have to review it. So that was quite the experience.
And how is it?
Yeah, it's kind of what I expected. It's a bit of a Frankenstein's monster of a movie. You can tell 100% they had to completely rework this film. I think Disney's MO is just to go with whatever is current popular thing, whatever is safe politically. The problem is that has all been pulled out from under them over the past 6 months or so. And this movie has just been scrambling to catch up ever since it was conceived of. So yeah, it is a mess of a film. Whole bunch of different ideas, whole bunch of different characters. Most of it goes nowhere, and I do not understand the point of any of it. It's a gigantic waste of money.
Anthony Mackie, the guy playing Captain America, went viral it's a few weeks ago now, where he said Captain America represents a lot of things, virtues, integrity, and so forth. But he specifically said, I think he said, not necessarily America, which is quite a hell of a statement for Captain America. Do you think Mackie, was he... I don't know if he's saying something that he believes, or is he parroting the spirit of the movie that they just created that now, as you pointed out, is kind of outdated with the vibe shift over the last 6 months?
I think there's an element of he misspoke a little bit, because when he gave this talk, he was in Rome. He was talking to an audience of Europeans. And so he was probably told by his handlers at Marvel, try and promote the universal qualities of this character. Don't focus too much on the American aspect, because it's not going to play as well over there as it will at home. And he didn't phrase it as well as he could have done. And I think this is the result, But I think what it does speak to is just a general skepticism and a general hostility around movies like this now that didn't used to exist before, partly because the last time we saw his character was in a TV show called Falcon and the Winter Soldier, which was very explicitly political, very anti-American, very race baity, and so it's left a sour taste in people's mouths when it comes to his character. And I think they were just looking for reasons to dislike this movie, and as it happens, he provided them with the biggest one ever.
That's an interesting angle that I hadn't thought about, Will. That what he said may or may not have been a reflection of sort of wokeism in Hollywood, but the commercial aspect of it, that makes a lot of sense to me. No, movies are made for the globe now. You want it to be popular everywhere. It's not just for a domestic American audience. And I can totally buy that some handlers let's emphasize values that apply to people in Italy as much as they do in America. So don't associate them exclusively with America.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate, sometimes actors or anyone really, when they're doing some kind of public appearance like this, they might not word things in the best way they possibly could, and it's very easy to misinterpret. And I think maybe there's an element of that here. But like I say, it speaks to the general atmosphere of hostility around this movie that I think has grown over the past several months. And yeah, this has just been a big headache for them from a PR perspective, and it came at the worst possible time, because this was not a movie that people were looking forward to. I
was at the Super Bowl this last weekend, Will, and I think being in the stadium in a crowd gives you a certain amount of credibility about what happens, but you also have to acknowledge that you're kind of like, it's like an instant flash poll and everybody voting at the same time. Like instead of doing give me the ayes and the nays separately, you do it at the same time, and then you have to measure what's louder. So what I'm saying is, like, they showed Trump. In my estimation, it was overwhelmingly positive. I see all these liberals on social media, and maybe there's some videos of boos. Well, let me just tell you, like, my flash poll, 90% ayes, 10% nays maybe. Taylor Swift, overwhelmingly negative. Might have been 100% nays, but they showed Anthony Mackie, and I was thinking when they showed him, I wonder how this is going to go, and I didn't feel like it, at best, 50-50. There was definitely an element of rejection. I'm not, I can't measure it. I can't tell you how big it was. I just know it was there.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I like him as an actor. I just wish they wouldn't have tried to shoehorn him into the Captain America role like this. And I think people are very tired of this idea that we take an existing character that's popular and we just race or gender swap or both that character and expect everyone to like them just as much as they did before. I would much rather they just wrote great characters for women, for Black people, for any minorities, and just created new characters that are interesting rather than just giving them these hand-me-downs that they seem to be going for now. It's the cheap, lazy way of doing things, and people are rejecting it, and that's what you're seeing here.
Do you see you mentioned Disney a moment ago. So Disney has retired, I guess, a couple of DEI programs. Now, I don't know, and I'm very skeptical. Do you rebrand them, stick them in a different department, fracture it up, bury it in 10 different departments? This is what the Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, has said he has to be on guard against, right? Doing away with DEI as a department, but making sure it doesn't just rebrand somewhere else. But there does seem to be, at least on the surface, a pivot from Disney, and it seems to be because of the thing that we sat around, and last time we were together, we may have talked about this. When do market forces start pushing back on ideology, right? And that seems to be what's happening with Disney, like shareholders and the failure. I believe I saw 700,000 subscribers canceled Disney Plus. Was it last year? It seemed to be a big revolt. And honestly, nobody's keeping up anymore with all the Marvel movies and the Marvel series. So all of this, it seems to have done something to pivot Disney.
Yeah, I think so. A lot of this pandering that they've gone in for over the past, 5, 6, 7 years is it's a luxury item when you're a business. It's something you can afford to do when you are raking in the money. And if you take a hit in the short term, fine, it's not a big deal. But now the problem they have is that all of their big money earning properties are heading in a downward direction. I mean, Star Wars has never been popular or never been profitable for them particularly. And Marvel, which used to be a huge money spinner, they have had a series of underperformers and outright flops. And so they can't really rely on that anymore. And they probably can't rely on their live action remakes of classic animated stories. And so they have to get a bit more realistic about what the audience actually wants. And part of that is they do not want this stuff anymore. This, DEI initiatives, they don't want the political lectures forced down their throats. And I think you're seeing this as part of a wider trend in the whole of Hollywood, really. They are having to get much more realistic about it. I think they wouldn't be if the US election had gone a different way, for example. They would 100% be committed to this stuff. But now they are getting a bit more realistic because they know that cultural rug has been pulled out from under them and it's time to change. So I think what you're going to see now is a quiet retirement of a lot of this stuff. I don't think they'll outright admit that they were wrong and that this didn't sell. They will just gradually de-emphasize it and then pretend that it was never a thing at all.
Well, what does that tell us about why it was a thing? If they were true believers, you'd hold on and you'd fight through. What it says to me is a little bit like the biggest lesson of COVID was the base human motivation is fear. And that fear can manifest in a lot of things, for your personal security, but also fear of ostracization, like being left out of the crowd or what's cool and that kind of thing. And, this insanity that lasted, let's call it 6-7 years, seems to be subsiding. And now they're changing, which makes you say, well, were they just fitting in? from whatever years we're going to call it, 16 to 23, where they're just fitting in and they're just followers. And that's what it tells us. They're just followers. They're not ideologues.
I think at the upper levels, they are absolutely just followers. They go with whatever they think is popular. I think they've hired a lot of ideologues that will die on this hill 100%. But I think they've been duped into believing this stuff was a lot more popular than it actually was. For example, social media. Most of it is owned by companies with a very specific political leaning. Elon Musk and stuff, they have exposed a lot of shenanigans going on with USAID. Who knows how many things they were funding, all to create this illusion that one particular worldview was way more popular than it actually was. And so executives who just follow the money, they'll see that and think, well, that's what people want. That's the popular thing. We should do that. Now they're learning, no, it was nowhere near as popular as we thought it was, and it's actually all falling down around our ears. We need to pivot quickly to counteract this and get away from it. That's what you're seeing now, and it's long overdue.
I'm just thinking out loud with you here, Will. Okay, I 100% believe what you said is true. Social media helped play a role in making one particularly unpopular worldview seem like it was mainstream, seem like it was the main thing, right? I also think that there's two other truisms in culture and in life. Generations swing. I don't know what it is or how it is or why it is, but generations rebel against their previous generation, right? And I think you could probably do it a little bit like this. Baby boomers left. They just went culturally left. That's what they did. I'm Gen X. And not many people pay attention to Gen X, but I think that Gen X, while not like hard right, was much more libertarian right. That's what probably I'd say Gen X was. And it's a response to their parents. Millennials swing back the other way, it seems like. They were part of this thing that we've lived through for the last 6-7 years. I can speak to the next generation. I guess they're called Z because I have 2 boys in that generation. Let me tell you something about that generation. It's on the right, and it's further right than Gen X, who raised this coming generation, right? And it's kind of fascinating the way this goes back and forth. And I think if we look at it like that, and presuming generations don't change drastically, they may within themselves, right? Maybe when you get to be 25, you change or whatever it is. It could mean that the future of entertainment and culture as Gen Z becomes the dominant culture is way further away from all this wokeism that we've seen, and it continues.
I think it's entirely possible. I think sometimes, particularly with the younger generation that's just coming up, they rebel against whatever the dominant cultural norm is. And in this case, it has been the left, obviously, for the past decade or so. Like, they have very much dominated entertainment, all of our educational institutions, government, even to some extent. And they, the instinct to rebel is just kind of inherent to being young. And so that's what they have perhaps rebelled against now, because this is the thing that's being preached at them. And if there's one thing young people hate, it's being preached to and told what to do. That's what they've experienced over the past decade of their formative years. And that's what they're pushing back against. So yeah, there's an element of that pendulum swing there for sure. Who knows what's going to happen when they become a dominant economic force, and they're the ones who are out going and buying cinema tickets, they're buying video games, any form of entertainment, really. That could bring about an even bigger swing.
Well, here's another thing that can drive that swing that I'm curious. Young people rebel against the dominant culture. And as you point out, the left has dominated culture for the past, really for a long time, to be honest. But it only was perceived to be the dominant culture, Will, for the past 10 years. So in other words, that's why so many young people are rebelling against it. If we rewind, the right was seen as the dominant culture at government and highest levels of corporation and that's why, like, young people, whatever, punk music, everything else is a rebellion against mainstream culture. At that time, that's what allowed them to think the left is cool, right? It dominated what's cool. The left is not cool right now at all. The right is cool. I do wonder, though. So what happens is the left overreaches. They get more extreme until you fall into this wokeism stuff. I do wonder, as the right sees ascendancy in culture, right, and becomes the dominant culture perhaps over the next 10 years, if that doesn't lay the groundwork for A, overreach, or B, rebellion again. So a future generation goes, I'm going back to being a lefty or whatever because that's rebellious.
I think if they want to maintain their cultural hold, the secret is going to be not being prescriptive to people. And that tends to be tied up with things like moral education, religion, that sort of thing. That's when you get into prescriptive, telling people how they should be living, how they should think about things, how they should behave. If you can avoid going too far into that and just encourage young people to say, be yourself, do what you want to do, try and not get too caught up in this these lies that you're essentially told, promising you free things if you go to the left, then they will maintain their cultural hold, I think.
Yeah. That's a tough balance to walk. Like, how do you create entertainment and content that puts forth, I think you and I would agree with this. If we look at art throughout history, it is intricately tied to values, right? Art is a message. Otherwise, it's wallpaper, right? If it doesn't have a message, it's wallpaper. And so the artist has a message to share. And that message, you would hope, is tied to some sense of worldview or values. And as you integrate your values into your entertainment, it's hard to avoid preachiness, right? But that's artistry. That's what that is. That's artistry, the ability to avoid didactic, prescriptive messaging. And honestly, the left was really good at it for a long time. They were really good at it for a long time.
But I think what you see with some of the greatest art ever is universal human themes of heroism, self-sacrifice, aspiring to something better, the individual striving against the collective, all of those things, the underdogs fighting against the evil empire, whatever it might be. All of those things are universal to the human condition, and they don't have to be tied necessarily to a political cause. But I think if you can emphasize those, you keep people happy, you entertain them, you encourage them to see great values in themselves and others. And I think that's then it avoids becoming too much of a cultural battlefield in the entertainment space. And I think then it becomes less contentious. So I guess that would be the thing I would always champion, is like that kind of classic universal value system that you can work into entertainment.
Here's what I'm watching, Will. I started with what you're watching. I'm curious. I think you and I have talked about this, whether or not this appeals to you, but I'm watching American Primeval, and I really like it. I don't know if you've watched it on Netflix.
I've seen it.
It's American history.
Yeah.
I haven't started. That's why I said I don't know if it'll appeal to you. It's American history, and honestly, it's part of American history that I don't think a lot of people know about. It's the expansion of Mormonism into the West, the establishment of that colony in Utah, and it's by Peter Berg. But I mean, I find it's really good.
Awesome. I mean, yeah, like for me at the moment, I'm kind of into a lot of the Taylor Sheridan stuff. So Yellowstone, Tulsa King, that sort of thing. Again, like he's great at just telling entertaining stories with great, interesting characters that have got a bit of nuance to them. And I don't feel like there's too much of a political slant one direction or the other, which is, for me, it's great fun. And I want to see more stuff like that, I suppose.
I'm watching Lioness. It's one of the better ones that I've watched from Taylor Sheridan. I like it a lot.
Yeah, that's Zoe Saldana that's in that, isn't it?
It is. Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to ask you this. I was sitting with a guy. I'm curious your thoughts on this. And first of all, I'm interviewing Kevin Costner. What should I ask him, Will?
I'd be tempted to ask him, why'd you leave Yellowstone, man?
I know. It's a way to really send that interview sideways, though. He'd get really mad, I feel like.
Yeah, totally.
No, he's got... Kevin Costner has a new series up at Fox Nation. He's exploring American national parks. And I had this conversation, not with him, with somebody else. It's kind of fascinating. They said, if I did a 2-hour documentary on a national park, nobody's going to watch it. But if it's 4 30-minute episodes, people buy in on that. I don't know if that's our attention span or what's happened to us, but we're way more willing to take on 10 episodes at an hour apiece as opposed to a 3-hour movie. You know what I mean? We need to now. It's like eating a gigantic steak. We have been conditioned, or we have come to like the idea of taking it down one bite at a time. Even though we may end up spending 3 hours watching, doing one more episode.
Yeah, you feel like you're progressing more when it's short episodes and you're really getting through it. It's the essence of binge watching stuff. And yeah, we have more distractions in our lives, unfortunately, whether it's just things that need to be done in daily life, or, we've got our phones, we've got games consoles, we've got the internet, we've got social media. There's all these things that are constantly competing for our attention. And so the ability to just give short bursts of time to something, I think, works a lot better for people nowadays than, a 3-hour movie that you don't necessarily have enough time to sit down and watch in a big block. And it's unfortunate because the result is a lot of things get dumbed down. And I've always had the impression with a lot of shows nowadays, they're almost designed to be put on in the background. And they know that people aren't really going to be watching them. They're just going to have them on in the background while they're, looking through social media on their phone or something. And that's a really sad state of affairs, because I feel like we should, as a people, have the ability to sit down, not get distracted, not go and do something else, and just watch a story unfold before our eyes for a couple of hours and just give it our undivided attention. But it seems like it's getting harder and harder to do that.
I think it's almost like meditation for me. Truly, you're 100% right. Like, I'm not distracted. I'm taking in a story for a period of time. It's when I relax. And weirdly, my wife doesn't get this. I relax when it's violent for some reason. Like, I just like those types of shows. It's what helps me escape. Real quick, Will, and I know you live over there, so the answer may be different. Do you subscribe to everything? Like, you have a subscription to every single service?
I mean, mostly, yeah, for like review purposes and stuff. Like, I might need access to Paramount Plus, Disney Plus, whatever. So I tend to have subscriptions for pretty much everything.
It's got to get expensive. Yeah, I think I do too, by the way, because I mean, you almost have to be subscribed to everything to get the one series everybody's talking about. By the way, Gear on YouTube says, "Wow, the drinker. I wasn't expecting that here on the Will Cain Show."
Neither was I.
It's the second time you weren't either. We'll get you on the television network as well. I hope at some point, Will. It's always good talking to you, man. Thanks for coming over.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
All right, Will Jordan, a.k.a. the Critical Drinker, here on the Will Cain Show. Check him out on YouTube. Everybody else is, so you might as well enjoy that. Okay, when we come back, 2 experts on personal conflict. We have a new book out. I think this is fascinating. I was excited to see, because I like lists, and categories, the different categories of go-to conflict personality styles. And I'm gonna give them to you real quick, and you tell me which one you are. Guess which one I am: the avoider, the competitor, the analyzer, the collaborator, the accommodator. Which one are you? Which one am I? Next on the Will Cain Show. It's the Will Cain Show, streaming live at foxnews.com, on the Fox News YouTube channel, and the Fox News Facebook page. Ian Giovanni says on YouTube, "Sup, drinker? Who let you in here?" LOL. That's because we just had the Critical Drinker, Will Jordan, here on the Will Cain Show. A lot of people upset about Mitch McConnell. Nina Shaw, Mitch did it again. Doug Thomas, boot him. And then Rich Halbrick says, "Thune is surprisingly good as a Senate leader." I'm shocked. Before I bring in my guests, they have a new book out, okay? It's called How to Get Along with Anyone. And it talks a lot about the work environment. Fellas in New York, Dan, James, I don't know if we can get you guys on. Which one of these 5 personality categories do you think I am when it comes to conflict? Do you want me to give them to you again?
Read them out again.
The 5? Okay. And I'll give you a little explanation too. The avoider, uninterested in minor details, excels in solitary work with a knack for concentration. That's number 1. Competitor, always pushing the envelope, never rests on laurels, and takes risks for achievement.
I like that one.
The analyzer, evidence-based, methodical, patiently gathering info before acting. The collaborator, deeply caring, oration virtuoso, relying on exceptional relationship skills. Or the accommodator, prioritizes achievements and well-being of those they care about over their own.
I think you're 3 out of 5.
Yeah, a little bit of each.
You think I'm 3 out of 5 of them? Really?
Yeah, the 3 middle ones.
Which
I feel
ones?
like
Competitor, analyzer, and collaborator.
Yeah,
Those 3 the most. Yeah,
I would say.
I'm not the accommodator or the avoider. I think that's.
Yeah, I don't think you're an avoider.
What about you? Which one are you, Dan?
I mean, if we're being honest, I hate to say this, I'm a little bit of an avoider in my personal life. I would have to say, just how I've been in some things, not with my work life, but some things in my personal life, because I put other things ahead of others. So
I think that Tinfoil Pat would say he's an avoider as well. That would be my guess. And what about you, James?
that's tough. Depends on the situation. Depends on the day. Probably somewhere between avoider and competitor and attacker.
I don't see it,
You
but
are
sure.
Figuring yourself out. You're 25 years old and you're figuring yourself out. All right. Now let's bring in the experts. Dr. John Eliot and Dr. Jim Guinn. They're the authors of the new book, How to Get Along with Anyone. They're both psychologists. And they've written this book on how to avoid conflict in the work environment. Good to see you guys. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
I'll try to direct them. You're both I didn't know you guys were going to be in New York. That's great. You're in studio in New York, looking sharp, both of you. One of you in an Aggie sweater and the other one in a sharp-looking.
I forgot to wear my
UT
baseball shirt.
Are you a UT guy?
Dear friend of mine, Dave Pierce, is a baseball coach there. But no, Jim and I were on the faculty at A&M together for a long time.
Well, unfortunately, Dave's not the baseball coach at UT anymore because we stole the head baseball coach from A&M, Jim Schlossnagel. And it's talk about conflict.
Oh, man.
Big one.
That's the conflict we avoid.
Right?
We're avoiders on that one.
All right, so let's start. Let's make this personal. I'll start with Dr. John. So if I'm a competitor, which is probably the one that I most readily identify with on these 5 personality types, what does that say about me and how I deal with conflict?
You like getting things done. People think of the competitor as someone who's overly aggressive, big egomaniac. That's not really the case. Remember, with these styles we're talking about, these are your go-tos under pressure. This is not, sort of how you handle the average, everyday things that pop up. This is when you're stressed, when you're pushed, when you're under a deadline. We're sports guys. And both of us play college baseball at a high level, and so we call them go-tos. Like the pitcher in the 9th inning, when bases are loaded, games on the line, there's a pitch that you go to when you're in that high-leverage situation. So these styles are all about what are your habits when you're in high-leverage situations. And so the competitor in their high-level situations isn't trying to piss everybody off and railroad everybody. They're trying to get the job done. And they have no time for BS and small talk. Just get out of the way. Let's get this game won.
Right. All right, Dr. Jim, what does that mean, though, about dealing with people that fall into these other categories?
Sure, absolutely. So we always call it, like you said, sports guys, best teammate and a worst teammate. And so that competitive style, that's going to work very, very well with certain profiles. But other profiles, it's going to absolutely trigger them and actually create more conflict specifically. So for an example, competitors, they want to talk, they want to get down to business, they want to get things done specifically, where an accommodator, that's the opposite of what they want. That is not their focus. That is not what they want to do. And so that's going to immediately trigger that conflict and make it worse in that situation.
Okay, you guys you said you're sports guys, and so you see a lot of this, and you apply it in the realm of sports within a team environment. I would suspect, whether or not it's baseball, football, whatever it may be, that a disproportionate number of the guys in that particular environment would fall, for example, in the competitor mold. But do you find when you deal with teams? No. I've got all 5 kinds of guys here on the baseball team.
Absolutely. And that's why there are different positions that are better suited for different players, why some guys are locker room leaders and some guys are on the field leaders. Some guys are quiet leaders. Because when pressure comes up, some guys rally their teammates, right? You think about the Tony Parkers of the world. And then some guys, the Tim Duncans or Dave Robinson, much more quiet, and they're the quiet leader style. So what's interesting is in the really big teams, the football locker room where you got 63 guys or whatever, you have the full range. And one of the reasons why we get called in to do workshops and to do one-on-one coaching is because a lot of these guys haven't taken a minute to really realize what their style is, what the guy in the locker next to them, what their style is, so that they know when someone is pissed or when someone has a bad day, what habits they're going to go to. Because a lot of people, assume someone has a habit that comes out because, they choked in a big situation, and we don't realize that, that's may not be necessarily who they are. That's a byproduct of habits. And what's the best way to deal with that, right? Do you give them a pat on the back? Do you give them space? Just those basic functional skills. Those are the ones that really matter for a team to come together in a locker room.
Yeah, and you make a great
I
point,
want to ask
Will,
you
on that too, of how
Go ahead.
Most know how to be a competitor. They can be a competitor, every day, over and over and over and over and over. But when they're triggered, when that emotion spikes and that reasons lowers, okay, they're going to default back to a specific style. So we find that most athletes they've mastered that competitive style until a certain point, but not their go-to.
Because what we're talking about is under pressure in the critical moments. This is what we're talking about, what your base level instinct is. Mm-hmm. I'm curious, from a leadership perspective, do you find any one of these personality types more represented than others? Basketball would probably be the easiest sport because it's a smaller group of guys. And, but I'm just curious, it's usually the collaborator that becomes the leader, whatever it may be. I'm curious, do you find one particular personality type? And the thing about sports that's interesting, and I want you to apply this as well, is by default, often we push the best player into a leadership position. But just because he's the best player doesn't mean he has leadership qualities. And then therefore he might not fit the best category that you may tell me is usually the best leader.
That's totally correct. And oftentimes you see different style depending on the practice, the grind, the long season versus when you're in a 2-minute drill. And so there's a leader on that team day to day when the cameras aren't on and they're going through long practices, preseason when they're going through the grind. The accommodator is steps up as the leader. But then under a 2-minute drill, it's the competitor that takes over. And if they know each other's styles, they work really well. They know that when I've got to take the reins and be the voice in the huddle versus when I need to let my teammate do that. The really great teams have 3 or 4 leaders, and we just see the one on camera, in the glamour moments. But they've got different guys in different situations that are really taking charge.
Right. Leadership for different situations, right? Okay, I don't know if you guys can do somebody from afar. I don't know if you could. You're both. You're doctors, so you're probably gonna tell me no. But I would guess that Tom Brady is a competitor. That's who I. But, yeah, that's what I would guess. But he's got elements of a voider. He's in the the film room by himself, studying forever, deep concentration. He's got to have an element of collaborator in it. But can you look at some of these athletes from afar and say, I can tell what kind of guy that is?
Some, yes. Some guys play it really close to the vest in terms of who they really are, and they don't play the media game. Brady, surprisingly, is an analyzer a lot of time. He's very methodical and thoughtful. You think about the TB12 method. You think about how much he studies film, right? He's very deliberate about the way he does things. And, in a 2-minute drill, his reputation for scoring with a minute and a half and proving John Madden wrong in the Super Bowl. But that's a product of how much he's prepared. But he's also demanding, and he demands that preparation from the guys around him, too.
Dr. Jim, that's a great – I want to stay with this one because that's a positional forced leadership. Mm-hmm. So in football, by default, it's going to often be the quarterback who is at some level – maybe you guys, to your point, there's different leaders for different moments in a season and different moments for different moments in a game. But it's the quarterback. It has to be. And talk about different personality styles here. Right? Mm-hmm. We probably look at this from afar and we all want our quarterback to be a competitor and an analyzer, maybe some elements of a collaborator. But I mean, there's some shy dudes, maybe some avoiders in that class, and that's probably a real challenge for them being forced into this leadership role.
Absolutely. No, that's a great point. And so we see this not only in the sports side of things, but we see this in you take the best nurse and you make the nurse manager. We see this in the corporate world where we take these people, and as you mentioned, it's a positional forced leadership side of things. And so one of the biggest things that we preach both in the book and the trainings and everything that we do is that so much of it is about, knowing your default, knowing that, okay, man, I'm a competitor and I know when I'm triggered, I'm going to be that competitor, but I've got to work on that. I've got to find these other styles. But one of the biggest things, from the quarterback standpoint, or in the workplace standpoint, is knowing the style of the other people around you, to where if you're a quarterback, we want it to be a competitor. We want to have that analyzer tendencies, but they need to be able to recognize and see, okay, man, my receiver's an avoider. And if I get in his face and blow him up, it's not going to work well. But I know for this style, like this offensive lineman, as you mentioned, Tom Brady, I need to rip him. And that's going to create that motivation. That's going to create that. And that's actually going to help us move forward. And so much of it's about, knowing your style, but knowing what style you need to have in that moment with that specific person.
That's a great point. You have your natural default style, but the best leaders, right? You go for the Bradys and the Mahomes, and look at what Jalen did. Those, they're all-stars and they're Hall of Famers because they learn how to be all five styles. One may come naturally to them, but by the time they're winning Super Bowls, they can easily adopt any one of the five styles. Like the pitcher that says, yeah, my inside fastball is the best pitch I got, but I can throw three others just as well. It takes development of that talent. And as Jimmy's saying, right, you got to know your teammates. I mean, look at Parcells and Terry Glenn and that fiasco. Neither one of them knew each other well enough to work together.
Easy bringing up the Cowboys.
Okay,
stuff.
and that's what the book's about. How to get along with anyone. So what you're talking about is seeing in other people what they are and understanding their triggers in your own, right? So can you just we'll go with Dr. Jim on this. Just like, what are some triggers? Like, run me through some triggers for these different personality types.
Sure, absolutely. So we break it down into three core ones. The first being task conflict, and that is over getting things done. And I will fully admit I'm a task-triggered person. That is, if somebody interrupts my schedule, if somebody's preventing me from getting the things I feel like I need to have done, I'm triggered. I'm off. The second biggest one is process conflict. That is over how things get done. That is so we don't want to fully commit that Brady is process triggered, but I think we can probably safely say that. That is over, I have a process, I have a way of doing things specifically, and if somebody deviates from that, boom, I'm triggered. And then the final one being relational conflict, and that is, it's over an hour of dealing with personal drama, of dealing with that family member, dealing with that roommate or whatever that is that's going to trigger us. For some of us, that's not a big deal. Doesn't feel stressful, doesn't make us default to our go-to. And for other people, an hour in relational conflict feels like an entire day.
Right. Okay, and then Dr. John, like, how do you now that you know each other's triggers, what do you do?
Yeah, well, first of all is know your own triggers too. When someone pisses you off or pushes your hot buttons or so forth, know when that's coming and why that's coming, because we spend a lot of time teaching people how to get out of conflict. Fight with your spouse, fight with your boss, coworker, whatever it is. A little bit of road rage, but far more important is prevent it altogether. So if I know. And I'm a process guy, right? Felix and Oscar, Abbott and Costello. It's one of the reasons we had so much fun writing the book. I don't care when things get done. I want them done the right way. And he's the exact opposite. He's like, screw your process. We got to get this done tomorrow. So I know in working with Jimmy in the time it took writing the book is if something is happening that's sort of making me a little itchy on process, I know I might get triggered. So then I can take action. I can talk about him and say, I'm concerned about this. And we can work on something before it's really pissing me off to the point where my emotion's too high to think about it rationally. And then vice versa. I know if I'm doing something, I know it's gonna bug him. And if I keep doing it, then he's gonna lose his head. And so I can steer that off altogether.
Give me some examples of where you guys have applied this. Like you said, you've been called into teams. Can you tell me? I don't know if you signed confidentiality agreements. Like, who have you worked with?
Yeah, the 300-page confidentiality agreements, the NFL and the NBA. We've done a lot of one-on-one stuff, with just teammates, but then whole locker room stuff. But Jimmy's done a ton of stuff with hospitals and school systems and governments. I mean, we look at what's going on in the world right now, and it's fine to completely disagree with someone or think their value system is way off base, but you can still get along with them. You still work with them. You can still find a way to collaborate.
And I think an example of that, I did one time, I went and did a training with a school district, training with a professional sports team, training with a large, Fortune 100 energy company. It was the same training, just switch up the examples, anything else. At the end of the day, it's people, it's conflict, it's how to.
When do they
get
call
along
you
with
in? When it's already gone to bed? Dr. Jim, is it already gone bad when they call you in?
Yes, there are a few stories in the book. So part of my background is doing over 1,000 divorce mediations. So that's when things have gone real bad. So I think that's for stories off air. And then, but yes, a lot of times on the corporate side of things, you'll get called in when things have gone bad, when the lawsuit, when that's escalated, and we resolve it. And then the second time we get called in, it's a lot sooner.
Yeah, the classic lesson that I learned way back in grad school is your phone probably won't ring until someone's about to get cut, or someone's about to get fired, or some coach is about to lose the locker room, and that is the worst time to handle this stuff. But unfortunately, that happens, and we got to put on our Superman suit and come in and try and say. And then that's when we have to dumb it down and find a simple little thing. Like I did a deal with a basketball team, NBA team. And they were starting to, have fighting in the locker room.
Mavericks.
Okay. We don't want to be part of that.
And
he didn't answer it.
We'll skip forward, right? But in an hour of talking to the guys in the locker room, the one piece of advice that they shook their heads, they nodded their heads and say okay, and that stuck they could do was, guys, just move your feet. Just move your feet. What
does that mean?
When someone punches us in the nose, or when someone yells at us, or when we're trying to figure out who's to blame for losing a game and so forth, under pressure, we tend to get a little more paralyzed, right? We tend to be much more, if we don't know how to handle it or mishandle it. And the equivalent on the basketball court is under pressure. Guys, stop moving. Just move. Just move your feet, right? Get in the key, get out of the key, just, take a pick, do something, right? And even if it may not be the right answer to what you're doing, and then even this is with your spouse or whatever, even if it's not the right answer, you're at least doing something, and the other person appreciates you're trying, and sometimes that's all it takes.
So you can tell me why they traded Luka?
He's gonna make me start crying on air. Yeah.
Absolutely not. There's some stuff going on that probably has nothing to do with basketball.
Huh? Yeah. Well, no, I've heard that. I've heard the rumors. Now, I have all these conversations I need to have off air to find out what really happened to my favorite basketball team.
Well, we started with an X-rated book that became an R-rated book that became a PG-rated book. That went back to it's R-rated. It's written for adults, but children can read it. And we've got a whole bunch of stuff that hit the cutting room floor that's going to be in our extended remix, non-rated sequel to the book of some truly crazy stories.
Well, I can't wait to read that one too. I mean, gosh, I got to see what hit the cutting room floor.
That's the one we really want to write.
We'll talk Mavericks together.
All right, the book. How to Get Along with Anyone. It's Dr. John Eliot and Dr. Jim Guinn. Check out the book. I appreciate you guys being with us here today. It's good to meet you both. Thank you.
Oh, pleasure's ours. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much.
Okay. All right. You guys take care. All right. That's going to do it for me today. I got to go interview Kevin Costner. What am I going to ask him? I got a little bit of time to figure it out. But I will see you again next time right here on The Will Cain Show.